Welcome to Choosing to Live Now. Today, we will explore the number one strategy that you will need to have your best life in 2022 and beyond. So in our last few discussions, you and I have explored the idea that there are two fundamental strategies that we needed to consider before we think about the forecast and the goals that we've made for 2022 that will help ensure that our plans are executed with excellence. And those two strategies were, first, acknowledging that we've experienced loss, and two, going through the grieving process in a very healthy and successful way. But here's the catch. I know, I told you that those were the main strategies, but there's one more, and that is forgiveness. Now you might be asking, where did forgiveness come in when we're thinking about grief and loss and these constructs? How does forgiveness line up to be adjacent to these other constructs? And that is a great question. And here's the answer to that. When we go through the grieving process, it is very common that we will find individuals in our lives, events, and sometimes even ourselves that have done things to us that have caused us to have so much pain, we find it difficult to move past. And that is unforgiveness. When we are unable to let go of the hurt and the pain and the anguish that someone, ourselves, or an event has caused us, while we're grieving a loss, while we're grieving things that we did not prefer that happened to us. To give you a more formal definition of forgiveness, I would love to use the definition provided by the American Psychological Association. And this is how it reads: the willingness to set aside feelings of resentment towards individuals who have committed a wrong, been unfair or hurtful, or otherwise harmed us in some way. Now, they want to be clear that forgiveness is not equated to reconciliation or excusing an individual for what they've done, or merely accepting what happened because an individual is angry, but rather, forgiveness is the act that involves voluntary transformation of one's feelings, attitudes, and behavior towards the individual that hurt them. I know that's a mouthful. But the gist of what they are suggesting is that forgiveness is an act that is voluntary on our part, where we choose to let go of the resentment and the anguish that we feel towards a person, an event, or even ourselves, so we can move forward and live a more productive life. Well, let's talk a little bit further. So, let's look at this definition of forgiveness, this voluntary release that individuals give. So if that is what forgiveness is, unforgiveness is the opposite. Unforgiveness is not being willing to put aside feelings of resentment towards an individual. Now remember, they're saying individual, but it could be an individual, it could be an event, or it could be against yourself. So having unforgiveness in your heart, means that you and I would be unwilling to let go of our feelings of resentment towards other individuals, events that we've experienced, or ourselves. Because we feel like we have been treated wrongly by these individuals, ourselves, or events that we've experienced. We feel like we've been hurt or otherwise harmed in some way. That's unforgiveness. And what's dangerous about unforgiveness is the fact that it has long-term physiological and mental health consequences on an individual's life. I want to give you an example. Have you ever seen an elderly person who is suffering from the beginning stages of dementia or maybe even Alzheimer's, and they have a little memory loss right now, not wildly severe, but they do forget some things. But if you bring up someone's name from their past, maybe 40 years ago, they can remember what they did, what they were wearing, how the perfume smelled or cologne smelled. They are angry, they get really, really worked up, and they're really, really frustrated. And they're living in this place where they just can't get past it. So you don't ever want to bring up those things that someone did to them in the past. Guess what they're dealing with? You guessed it, unforgiveness. And I remember growing up as a kid watching elderly people act in that way and saying to myself, I never want to be that. I don't know what they went through. I do not want to be like that. I'm not going to be that person when I get older. And the reality is, life has uncertainties, ebbs and flows, ups and downs. We never know what we're going to have to go through. And we never know where we're going to experience hurt or pain. And as a result of that, we never know when there's going to be moments in our life when we need to forgive someone for the pain that they may have caused us. And not doing so has negative effects. Before we do that, before we get into the negative effects that unforgiveness causes us, let's think about what unforgiveness looks like as it relates to its construct. So when we think about unforgiveness, what we're really dealing with is cognitive distortion. And let me explain. So it begins with, I've been hurt and I'm feeling a lot of pain. This pain is unbearable for me. I'm in so much pain, it hurts so bad. Remember, part of the grieving process is to be able to identify with your pain, right? So you're in the process of dealing with your pain. But every time you think about this pain, this person, this event, or you even think about yourself and the mistake that you may have made and you cannot get around it. So what happens to us in unforgiveness is we begin to ruminate. You see that? We begin to circle over and over in our mind the mistakes that we made. So much so that we become trapped in a cycle of rumination, which means repetitive thought that does not stop, that will not be controlled around a topic to the point where we become ill in the way that we think about ourselves and we think about others. So if it's a person, for example, that hurts you, that you're struggling with unforgiveness with, and you're having these ruminating thoughts about this person, you spend a lot of time thinking about this person and the characteristics that this person has, right? And you think about it over and over and over again, making it very difficult for you to trust anybody else. So when new people come into your space that remind you of that person who hurt you, even if they're totally different, you don't give them an opportunity to be who they are or show you who they are. You immediately say, no, thank you. If the person who hurt you that you are struggling with forgiveness with and you have unforgiveness in your heart is your father, you'll say, no, thank you. If it's your mother, no, thank you. You might suddenly realize, I don't want to have anything to do with any females or males or children because whoever they were hurt you. Are you hearing that? You're literally cutting off segments of your life, opportunities to connect, opportunities to grow, opportunities to meet new people and have an amazing experience because of one experience. So what does that mean? that means that you're trapped. Can you believe that? I know. Mind blown. But it's real. You are trapped in this cycle with this person who hurt you and you can't get out. They may have gone on with their life. They may not even be living anymore. They might be a person that you loved, and also they were a person that hurt you at the same time. So you have these conflicting realities in this relationship that you have with this person, and you cannot forgive them, but they're no longer here. And yet, them no longer being here, no longer being in your life, you are stuck and trapped around unforgiveness. Isn't that something? And God forbid the person who you are struggling with forgiving is an individual who you don't really care for anymore and don't trust them. And you want them to see you in a better light. They hurt you and left you in a low space. And now you want to be in a better space and run into them later when you are at your optimum self. But you're stuck in unforgiveness. That means that they own you. I know, mind blown. Listen, and I'm not projecting at you. I have experienced unforgiveness, both of an individual and of myself. But the story for which I'd like to share today is my struggle and journey to forgiveness of myself. So when I graduated from high school, I knew that I wanted to be a psychologist. And I lived in a very religious family. And my family was extremely connected, cohesive, where it wasn't that you made decisions about your life on your own. You made them with consideration to the community. And in that state, my family community stated that it was very important that I either became a doctor, medical doctor, a lawyer, or some sort of technologist, whether it be a computer scientist or an engineer. Those were the only allowed careers in my family life. And that was really difficult for me because I wanted to be a psychologist, but there was a lot of negative stigma both in the religious community that my family was from, as well as my family's idea of what success was. And so I kind of wandered a bit. I went to college just like my peers right after high school. And then after 2 years, I kind of decided I was going to take a break. And I kind of wandered and worked in different fields that reminded you of the work that psychologists do in helping others and all of those sorts of things. And I really was just very unhappy. And I took a 7-year break, and then I came back in after I gave birth to my first son, and I was married for 4 years. I said, you know what I want to do? I want to go to school to be a psychologist. And my mother encouraged me that that's what she desired, that's what she desired. My mother encouraged me that she knew that this was the path I loved, and I should go for it because life was short. And I ran, took off. However, it took me about 6.5 years to finish my undergrad degree because I was a mom now and I worked a full-time job. And then even as I was finishing my undergrad degree in those 6.5 years, I had 2 more children, right? And life became very, very different for me. And it took me all the way to the point that I finished my 2nd master's degree and entered my PhD program, that I was still holding on to unforgiveness of myself because I had not finished earlier. I thought to myself about, wow, if I had done this 7 years ago, I'd already be here. I'd be a senior in my career. I'd have this, I'd be doing that. I really just had all these ideas of what success would look like for me if I had done it earlier. Couldn't forgive myself. And as a result, everything that I did felt like it was never good enough. Until I started to really do soul searching and walk through my own journey of healing and begin to realize that one of the greatest assets of my doctoral and graduate journey had been the fact that I had a family who supported me. Many of my friends and my classmates and colleagues, they often lived hundreds of thousands of miles away from their family. And many days they would want to quit their pursuit of success because they did not have the support. And it was because I had the support that I was a full mother, I was a full wife, I worked, I did all these things while being in school, and I was able to thrive because of the support. And at that moment, I was able to forgive myself. And now look, 5 years later, I'm writing my dissertation as we speak. I am working on becoming a better version of myself, and it is only because of these support systems that I've had in place. But I could not forgive myself. So for a matter of about 7 years, I was in this ruminating thought about myself. I didn't think I was good enough. I was comparing myself to other individuals around me, not looking at all of the success that I already had accomplished, not looking at the amazing life that was still left for me to live. And I know I said I was only going to give you a little bit of information about my personal unforgiveness and forgiveness story for myself. But let me give you another story about unforgiveness that I had against my father. I struggled with forgiving my father many years ago because my parents were married for maybe 17, 18 years, and then they divorced when I was young. And when my parents divorced, my father disappeared. And there were a lot of inconsistencies in our relationship, and I struggled with forgiving him. What made me change was the fact that I began to have children. He wanted to have a relationship with them. I thought it was important, but it was difficult for me to face my children with a positive attitude towards my father when I didn't have one. So I had to talk through the journey with my father, cry with him, be willing to forgive him and let him go, and really look at things not just from the vantage point of my own pain, but also look at what may have caused him to act in a way that was harmful to me. And while his side of the story didn't necessarily heal my pain, it gave me clarity that just like I was a human, so was he. And just like I needed forgiveness in things in my life, so did he. And I released it. Did I do it all in one day? Not all in one day, but I did a lot of it at one time. Because I realized I was trapped. And I wanted to be free. And my friends, I want that for you. I want you to be free too. Because here's the thing. What rumination does to the brain is it changes the structure of your brain. That constant thinking negatively about a person, about an event, about yourself, where you cannot forgive, it causes your brain to change. It causes memory loss. It causes all sorts of anxiety to come upon your life. It causes you to have issues with depression because you can't get out of the loop. You are literally trapped in a cycle and you don't even realize it. And it also causes you to develop other mental health disturbances because you can't get out of it. Causes heart disease to be manifest even quicker. If you're already a candidate for heart disease because it runs in your family, it makes it happen quicker. Causes blood pressure to be elevated. You have to find a way to forgive. If you plan on living your best life now, forgiveness is not an option. It is mandatory for you. And the reason why it is the number one strategy that I would suggest is the fact that without it, you have nothing. You can manage your losses by acknowledging them. You can process your grief. You can go through all those changes, but if you cannot forgive, it keeps you trapped. So for every success that you attempt to make, you're never your optimum self because your mind is in a cycle. And that cycle keeps spinning no matter how high you try to go. And when you eventually get to your epoch, our place where we want to be, you are stuck not being able to enjoy it because you're unable to forgive. So I want you to think about the importance of forgiveness. I want to say to you today that it is not easy to forgive, but it is mandatory. If we're going to move forward and live our best life, we need to forgive. And if these videos prick your heart, go back and watch the one about grief. Go back and watch the one about loss. Because they're all intertwined. It's almost as if I would say that acknowledging loss, managing grief, and forgiveness are like a holy triad. If you can do those things, you will be successful in every endeavor that you have in life. Because as I stated earlier, there are ebbs and flows. That means ups and downs in life. There are uncertain circumstances that we are going to face, regardless to what we plan to be perfect. And there are going to always be instances where we need to forgive someone, to process some loss, and to heal from some grief. Whatever that may be, whatever stage of life we may find ourselves in, if we are able to successfully acknowledge loss, process our grief, and forgive, we will always be in an optimal state of mental health. We will always be. And one more thing I want to share. Now, I'm talking about unforgiveness and rumination as it relates to, your relationship with others, events that you've experienced, or personal. And I didn't talk heavily about events. Events are hard. Events are hard because you don't have a person to blame. But they can have the same effect. They can. You still have to forgive. You have to forgive. You have to let it go. Let go of the resentment. Yep, you went through that. Yep, you lost that. And you know what? You're alive to tell the story and to help someone else. Also remember this, that when we walk in unforgiveness, especially when it is internal against ourselves, one of the worst things we do to ourselves? We don't take care of it ourselves. Can you believe that? But here's the reality of the story. We hear a lot of people talking about, self-care, self-care, self-care. Let me tell you something. When you don't walk in forgiveness into yourself, that's the first thing that you give up, self-care. And self-care is not just wearing makeup if you're a female, working out if you're a male, eating right if you're a male or a female or other. It's not just that. Self-care is taking care of yourself, working out, eating well. You lose you. Going to get a haircut, getting a shave, going to the doctor, taking medication that you need to help you to be better. When you stop being able to forgive yourself of the mistakes you made, you literally give up on living and being your best self. You say, I don't deserve better. I don't deserve anything because of all of the mistakes I made. I can't forgive myself. And so you inadvertently give up on life. And it's almost as if you're waiting to expire. And you might not feel suicidal in any way, but that is the danger of unforgiveness to yourself. And as I stated earlier, when you struggle with unforgiveness to people, you miss out on great opportunities to build relationships and to grow and to be better. As we've learned from these 22 months or 24 months that we've been in this global health crisis, we need each other. Especially on platforms like these and others. We need each other in person. We need each other. I know many of us have Zoom fatigue, But honey, we need each other. We need each other in a meaningful way, because if we don't have each other, we have learned that it makes our mental health worse. But when we live in unforgiveness, that cycle, rumination, we're not even open to be present, to make new connections, and to be a part of other people's lives, because we believe that what we experienced in the past, someone else is going to do that to us, even though they're different. And that is a cognitive distortion. That is painting of pathology. That is the beginning of the breakdown of you being your best self. And we want to stop that at the root by dealing with forgiveness now. So as we close out today in our conversation, here's what I want us to think about in our final thoughts. You ready for it? First thought of the evening. Forgiveness is not a product of forgetting, but rather a product of release. Can I say that again for the people in the back? Forgiveness is not a product of forgetting, but it is a product of the release. Yep. You're not going to forget when you forgive. That's not what it's about. Part of your body is made to remember things that you've gone through, in a way to protect you, that when you see it happening again, that you're safe and protected. Your brain does that. But what forgiveness does is when you're able to release the pain that someone else caused you, you can move on and have a meaningful life. You might not be close to that person anymore, but you can have a meaningful life, making new connections and not being held captive to a previous experience. The next thing, number 2, forgiveness is hard. Man, listen, forgiveness is challenging. It is easy to stand in a place of unforgiveness as opposed to forgiveness. But in the same instance that forgiveness is hard, number 3 is forgiveness is mandatory. This whole channel is designed to community and us living our best life despite circumstances. And let me tell you, my friends, you will be hurt again. If you navigate forgiveness better now, it'll be easier to do it in the future. It is mandatory because we have to be free. We cannot be bound. And number 4, this is my favorite one. You are not alone. You know I like to say that, but it's true. You're not. We are in this together, my brother and my sister. I am working through forgiveness of myself and others constantly because I want to live a free life. There is no way for us to move forward unless we are free. I don't want any person, any event, any entity, anything to stop me from being able to be my best self. So I make a conscious effort to forgive, and I'm asking you to do the same. And when we're able to do that together, we are about to have an amazing life and journey. Listen, thank you so much for logging in and sticking with me today. I have enjoyed meeting with you once again, and I look forward to meeting with you soon. Remember, I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back. You are not alone. I am with you. This is a community. You are worthy of being your best you now. We are in this together. I know, friend, I know it's been difficult. Because honey, it's been difficult for me too. But we're going to get through this together. I'm not giving up on you. I believe in you. And if you know of anybody else who needs to know that they are not alone, please share this content. If you like what we've been talking about, on this channel, please like, please comment, be active in the comment section. And please, if you want to hear more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. I'm here with you, and I'm excited about our future. We are a community. Say it with me. We are a community. You are not alone. We're going to do this together. Until next time, blessings to you today, my friend. In case you weren't sure, I wanted to remind you, everything you go through, and not only for you, it's not only for your testimony is a part of somebody's breakthrough. Every time you